So he's been at this company called Kong API Management. Now we're definitely deep in the AI space and connectivity on AI. We'll talk about that some. And he was in his 20s when I first met him, so he still looks mostly the part. But a good friend, and then another really good friend, Kevin. We were at a startup called Cloud.com 15 years ago. That's when we met. Startup, we started off, but the best part of that, the company's long gone, but the best part of it is we developed our friendship and still friends to this day. He's also an operating partner in Agency Global, providing his wisdom and advice to a lot of the aspiring companies. And now you're at Elastic. How many years there, Kevin?
Over 12 years now.
Wow,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kevin.
Yep, that's good.
I've been at Elastic for over 12 years now and have a background mostly in kind of enterprise software and internet infrastructure startups.
So he was the first engineering leader there. He took me aside to restaurants and I'm going to this company called Elastic. It was sort of a glint in folks' eyes, and now where they are, $2 billion company, and that going strong. Okay, and then finally my other good friend. So James and I met maybe 20 plus
30 years ago. 30 years ago.
We were young consultants at Accenture. It was called Anderson at the time. Right here in Palo Alto office, they had an internet center of excellence when internet was just coming out. But we've stayed in touch. But James has been around the many blocks. So he was the CTO at PayPal, the CTO, Chime, the CTO and SVP there, and now this new adventure, Intuit, a small company around the corner. If you could tell a little bit about your history, James.
Sure. Yeah. So I have spent time both at startup companies in the early stages of working with money movement, as well as you've heard some of the larger companies. I really focus now on fintech and all dimensions of it, whether it's sending money, receiving capital, consumer, small business, and having a lot of fun. What I try to do is bring that entrepreneurial, what happens in a startup, and it's hard to do in a larger company, but try to keep that culture and the capability of a team to operate like a startup but in a bigger company.
And thanks, James. And he also is involved with Agency Global, providing his wisdom and advice to emerging companies like yourself. So we're quite privileged to have them. Now, everything's about AI. I don't know how you can avoid that topic or that whole area. Maybe, James, since you got the mic, I'll start with you. Are you everything you hear about, like layoffs, job cuts, or changes happening because of AI? Are you seeing some of that where you are or around you?
I'm not seeing it in the industry. The way I'd characterize it, a lot of people are pausing on hiring early people. I personally think that's a mistake. And actually at Intuit, we're doing the opposite. We're hiring more new college grads is a goal. And the idea is that our thinking is that will help populate a whole raft of people who don't have preconceived notions and are growing up pretty quickly to become AI natives, if you would. And then I have an optimistic view that I think what AI is going to enable is actually more complexity. And so the application, sure, you can use AI today to create a program of today, but the needs are going to go up. You're going to need like a multimodal, computer vision, talking thing that does everything, and you're still going to need to manage that and orchestrate it. So I think there might be a little bit of a curve, but over time, we'll still need people who understand all of these technologies and capabilities.
Interesting take, maybe a more enlightened one. Maybe I'll turn to Kevin, asking maybe somewhat a little different about what department you think will get a big cut, like a 50% or something dramatic, or maybe you're not seeing that, but what are your thoughts?
So first I want to say I don't think it's going to be engineering, which is where I have my background. The thought experiment that I ran, I don't know what others think, but I said, well, if I could have the same size team and go 50% faster, or I could cut that team by 1/3 and go the same speed, which am I going to do? I'm going to keep the same size team and go 50% faster, but I'm optimistic in what we can go achieve. So I don't see reason to think there's going to be a lot of cuts in engineering. We have seen the Salesforce said they cut the customer care staff from I think 9,000 to 5,000. So that was 45% cut. Now they didn't just let them go. they reassigned them to other departments and kept them in the company, which was very kind of them. But yeah, in that role, I think, and even in Elastic, we built our own kind of customer service chatbot, and we're seeing 35–40% case deflection courtesy of the chatbot. So I think that specific segment, at least to what I've been exposed to, is one that's going to see some change from AI.
That's interesting insight. We just see the headlines in news, but actual practitioners and leaders in the area. Thank you, Kevin. So, Marco, anything more to add on that?
I think it's quite interesting, what we're seeing. I believe that there is a category of tasks that, quite frankly, do not even require a human interaction. Even when you look at customer success organizations, you will see humans being involved with the top tier of customers, and then there's going to be a long tail of customers that, quite frankly, you could put in front of them an AI agent, and as long as they're getting their answer, it wouldn't make a difference to them, especially for the ones that are not paying that much money, which is though the long tail. It's the largest number typically of customers when you look at your typical business. So I do fully believe that there is going to be a human component in the organization for as long as there is going to be value in having human interactions. So I do believe that sales may take a while, especially in the area of enterprise sales, where people still buy from people and they want to create that relationship and that partnership. But there is lots of sales which is very transactional, does not require that product-led growth, where I believe that AI can play a bigger and bigger role in replacing some of that workforce. Now, with that said, though, I also believe that AI needs to get better. And how do we make AI better? By gathering data points from how the organization works and how the humans interact with certain tasks or certain things that they're doing. And by removing that factor alone, we may lose the ability to further improve AI over time and to improve it quickly because we're losing the data points. And so where do we get those data points? Either we buy it from somebody else that's offering those models to us, or we develop them in-house by learning from the experience that humans interactions are occurring in either customer success or sales or elsewhere. Now, I do believe that engineering is not going anywhere, and I do believe that AI, if anything, it's an abstraction layer on top of everything else that we've been doing. So architectural thinking is still very much there. Security thinking is still very much there. And if you've spent a decent amount of time using one of those AI-powered IDEs, you know that AI, sometimes it can fail spectacularly at quite simple architectural and security type of tasks. Now, it's going to get better for sure, but I don't know what I don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. I believe that there is lots of value into making sure that as AI does the low-level jobs, we can still oversee the overall architecture that AI is generating, and that's not going anywhere. And so maybe engineering is going to be less about coding and coding at all costs, and more about thinking and architecturing a system that can grow and scale properly, and which is also what we have now, but more people will leave perhaps the crazy coding and join the architectural teams.
And that kind of led to the other question, like what is the bottleneck? And I mean, you guys are all coders or have done it. But is that the bottleneck anymore? Are you leveraging AI to write code, I guess? Is anyone, if I may ask?
Yeah, maybe I can say, as much as I love writing code, I also have used a lot of these new AI agents that allow you to code, and I gotta say the improvements of the models, even compared to like 12 months ago, has been astonishing. I mean, AI does improve in a very exponential way. I think where AI it's still not so good is being able to oversee its own job. And so sometimes my role, especially if I'm trying to create software or experiments or prototypes using these IDEs like Cursor and so on and so forth, it is more about overseeing whatever AI is doing. Now, perhaps one day there's going to be an agent that oversees what other agents are doing. It already exists, as a matter of fact. And I guess the secret sauce is in the ability to effectively have such agent to be effective. And today, humans are the most effective type of agent to be able to oversee this type of work, but I don't exclude and rule out that in the future we may have other agents that do that. So.
Kevin, are you seeing it like that? Are you utilizing AI?
Yeah, I'd make a couple of comments here. In the case of the software that I manage, it's a pretty complicated database-like product, and the engineers did attempt using an LLM and largely said, no, we're not using the output of this in our production code. We've had some success with some one-off tools, maybe a little bit of success in testing cases and things like that. So it's been, from our experience so far, it's had its place, but it hasn't made it into a lot of the production code that we're actually shipping. The other part I think here is interesting is we do play a little bit with people developing agents, and where Elastic can play is we store a lot of enterprise data, and so then people want to transmit that data in a context window to an LLM. But what they come at it with, I think, a level of excitement of, hey, I'm going to write an agent, it's going to do stuff. And they're a little more focused on do stuff as opposed to what's the problem and what do I need to do to solve the user's request. And so that's, I think, a place where my impression the industry struggled a little bit to really develop the proper context and relevance of what is the user saying, what are they trying to do, and what's the best information I can send to the LLM, so that then when the LLM takes an action or offers to take an action, it's the correct action that will actually solve the user's problem. Okay. So I think that's a part where we're spending a lot of our time trying to help people, and I see a little bit of struggle there.
Okay, thanks for sharing your insight. And James, things to add to that?
Yeah, I'd add a couple things. What we're seeing at Intuit is how do you start scaling this kind of thing to an enterprise level? And I personally really love the tools because I started out getting into the industry because I love programming. But as I went into management, you get further and further removed and rustier. And it's actually allowed me as a hobbyist to kind of go back to what I loved in a much easier fashion. And what you see though is all the tooling and methodologies, they're still set up primarily for one engineer to be working with something. And we kind of saw, first of all, the LLMs would help you with code snippets, or you talk to it. Then the IDEs came along, which help you do work at a much more sophisticated level. Where I'm focusing right now with teams, and when you start scaling up to teams with hundreds of engineers or thousands of people in a company, what methodologies can work in that world? And there's one called BMAD. There's a couple others. But really, it's spec-driven development. So imagine the cost of code goes to zero, other than the tokens. And what's really durable are the specifications, the PRD, the engineering design, the arc spec, all of the details. And then you generate the code from that. And then you're really going to iterate on specs. So it's really interesting watching how fast the world is changing. And I am trying to find, what is the methodology that we're going to use? And it's going to vary. Are you a small startup? Are you one person army? Are you a big giant enterprise? Are you working on old code, new code? All these different areas, and I think we're going to see a bunch of different tools and methodologies and best practices. But it's an area I'm focused on right now because I've got to steer this giant company from an old way of doing development to a new way of doing development. And the best analogy I can come up with for those who lived through the agile transformation. I don't know if you remember, we used to have waterfall and Gantt charts and programming and V-step engineering processes, and then agile totally reinvented that. I think we're going through another reinvention. Exactly what is it? I'm actually very interested if anybody has particular things that they've run across that they think are good. BMAT is the one. I forgot what the acronym stands for, but it's pretty interesting as spec-driven development.
Thank you. Thanks so much, James. Kevin, I have a specific question. You may recall the context window. Thoughts on that and the challenges it poses, or how you might be solving it?
Yeah. So the thing right now, there's a lot of emphasis on the context window and that it is perceived as small. And so I think there's actually a lot of technology in different directions to go there. Yes, I'm sure the context window will continue to get bigger and bigger, but adding more context is not cost free. pay for all the tokens that you're sending over. And so there's a couple of different places we can push. One is that with improved relevance and access to your data, you can get better context sent to the LLM that's more token efficient. And we think also, I think we're seeing it already, the LLMs are getting better at using the context that you provide. So even if you change absolutely nothing, your results back from the LLM will be improving over time. So I think we're seeing those two things happen as well. The other one that we've seen a bit of is the things I just said were all in the context of LLMs, but some people are building their own smaller models that are much more domain specific. And so if you see these like smaller domain models, often they have smaller context windows. And so, if it's a per token price, it's less. But these things, because they're domain specific, can actually produce excellent results with smaller context windows. So it's a little unclear to me right now, how is this going to play out? Like, will we see a proliferation of these smaller models that are very domain specific? Shane just told me no one's doing that anymore, so maybe he's ahead of me, but we're seeing it a little bit, and then, or will everything just consolidate on the LLMs, and we'll learn to live with the context windows as they grow.
Interesting. We're living it.
Oh, one other thing actually I should have mentioned, just because continuing on the theme of agents, the agents are actually pushing on the context window a lot. Because if you think about agent interactions, they're often iterative, so you're building more and more context. And so there's a premium on how do I consolidate all that context for the LLM in the most relevant way. So there's, I think as we see more and more agent development, the pressure around the context window will probably increase.
Interesting. You see it happen as it unfolds. Marco, any thoughts on what would you like to add?
No, I mean, context, it's one of those things that actually not all context sizes are equal, and even pretty fair large context sizes, even though your model may claim they have 1 million tokens, let's say context size, what you will notice is that after consuming approximately half of it, so 500,000 tokens, the performance and the output and the reliability of those interactions degrades sometimes, actually quite significantly often. Even though the model has been advertised as being able to handle twice the context size, at half the size, it will degrade exponentially. That is quite of a huge problem. And I think that, to your point, yes, maybe larger context windows are going to help, but perhaps a better way to recalculate or reformulate the context as we go could be another technique that can be used to fundamentally improve the quality of the output as we keep pursuing as we keep asking the agent to do things for us. Now, the thing about the context, though, is that it's so relevant because the context fundamentally determines how complex of a task the agent is going to be able to handle. And for an agent to be able to take care of a multifaceted, issue and all of its aspects, and being able to make the right call while keeping in mind all of the different possible scenarios, well, we need a high context window, and yet the context window becomes so unpredictable the bigger and the larger that becomes. And so I think we will need to find new techniques to optimize for how we generate the context, how we summarize that context, how we use the context for subsequent tasks, how we share contexts among the different agents when we try to build multi-agent type of systems with coordination across different agents, and being able to selectively perhaps choose contexts across a multi-workflow or multi-agent type of flow, being able to contextually fetch the right context. So context within the context in order to be able to invoke the right agent. It's a huge problem, and it is what right now makes agents quite unreliable at scale, at least in my observation.
Interesting, but it's changing every day. Okay, thank you. So a little bit back to what James, you were saying. You're still hiring folks, right? Is your recruiting team or yourself also leveraging AI to screen for the right folks, types, or how's that manifesting?
Yeah, absolutely. Every single job function is leveraging AI, and it's something we're working through. So recruiting as well. Did you have any? I'll tell you one thing that we are doing differently with
Please.
our hiring. I mentioned that we're hiring earlier career people, And for us, because it's such a pivot, like it's such a bigger group, we actually weren't set up to train them all and educate them and coach them all. And we didn't want to just hire a bunch of people and have them have a bad experience. So we actually are working with another firm that specializes in this kind of thing, where they're helping us on the assessment of early college people, but also we created our own curriculum and a pretty exhaustive boot camp to teach them the basics of like distributed computing, and how do you architect and scale and use our infrastructure. And so that we're using AI to screen and get people in the funnel, but we're also we want to make sure that they don't just rely on AI. You still got to teach all of the basics. But we hope that combination of understanding our systems and our design principles combined with their AI openness, and then just unleashing them with all the AI tools to help us figure this out.
Wow, that's amazing. So this is a call. James' team may be hiring. So if there folks,
Yeah, we're looking for great new college grads, people who either graduated recently or will be graduating.
Okay, we'll get the word out. And maybe Kevin, you also hire a lot, right? Recruiting team leveraging AI. And one specific thing, you think maybe it's filtering out folks maybe you do want to hire, or any sort of downside?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. The recruiting team does interact with it a bit and use it, and it's definitely permeating our HR systems quite a bit, and really helpful for us in the creation of knowledge bases for our employees. We've actually, I think, had some of the most success with onboarding materials like James just mentioned. I would say it's been much more impactful for us to collate the knowledge we have to create good onboarding material than in the actual recruiting process. So I think, I do wonder, you asked, are we losing candidates? I suspect we are losing candidates. But the flip side of it is, what was the recruiter doing before it had any kind of input from an AI system? So, it depends. Recruiters are, in my experience, highly variable in quality.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know. I guess I'd be curious to know where the AI might stand in terms of recruiter judgment percentile. I would expect we're losing some, but it has not been a major problem for us, and in fact, I think it's probably helped our candidate flow a bit.
So net positive.
Yeah, net positive so far.
Okay, awesome.
And like I said, from my experience, much more net positive on onboarding than in the actual recruiting process.
Interesting. Okay, Marco, please.
We're trying, as you know, at Kong to try to introduce some AI, not necessarily in the recruiting aspects of it, more in the plumbing across different departments. You see, there's lots of things that we humans do, right? And then there's lots of expectations between different teams and different departments. And usually those expectations are the plumbing that enables an organization to work well together. Most of that plumbing today is being taken care of with emails, with Slacks, with opportunistic, unless there is a very well-defined process. And so what we're seeing is trying to find opportunities where AI can help humans actually focus on what they were hired for, and try to delegate some of that plumbing, some of that coordination, some of that needs to still happen, but it's not necessarily something that each one of our employees is 100% focusing on, being able to effectively smoothen that out so that each one of us can be much more effective on our job, while we know that there is something else that takes care of being able to share results and share summaries and being able to let other teams and other people know about a specific event or a specific piece of information. And so being able to automate the plumbing is what we're focusing on right now. Then after the plumbing, of course, we're going to be going one level deeper and say, okay, now that we have the plumbing AI powered, so to speak, is there any one of these functions where maybe we should not have a human doing that specific task, but perhaps we can deploy an agent to do it? And when the plumbing is already being built in such a way that it's automated, it's much easier to then take individual functions and being able to experiment with some agentic automation there. And this is what we're trying to accomplish now.
Is there a particular function or department you see?
I think sales enablement is a big one. I mean, think about sales enablement. If you have an enterprise sales force, their ability to articulate the value of the product is going to determine if they're going to be selling their product or not. Now, sales enablement, it's lots of repetitive tasks, information sharing, lots of testing, lots of quizzing, we are deploying AI agents that help both with the enablement function as well as help our field team being able to get answers right away whenever there is a customer question that they may not know the answer for. Now, this is extremely critical because again, in an enterprise field motion, you may have the best product in the world, and yet if your salesperson doesn't know how to explain it or show it or articulate it, then you're going to lose that deal. So it is one of those functions that, in a way, it's plumbing, right? You are enabling people constantly and continuously with new data from product marketing, from product management, and so on and so forth. And yet, it's one of those plumbings that it's quite effective at improving the efficiency of the overall business. So we're trying there, and it's also something that nobody really wants to fix for real, because sales enablement, it's not necessarily the most exciting thing. It's lots of busy work. And so this is perfect for an agentic type of workflow to take care of.
Right. Thanks, Marco. We're living it. We're both at Kong.
You know very well
Yeah.
some of the challenges there.
Yeah, it varies a ton. So, but it's also right for opportunity. Kevin, any other groups? I mean, you're obviously close to engineering tech, but other groups you see in your company or elsewhere that might be right for getting support?
The one, I know there's a startup console that's doing IT support help automation and agents. I think that kind of makes sense to me because if you think what is a lot of that job, it's figuring out what the user is asking for, seeing if they are allowed to do what they need to do, and then taking some administrative action on that. So I think that space is somewhat similar to customer care, but I think that space probably is the one that stands out the most to me. We've had some amount of success on the HR side, creating chatbots to answer employee questions, because we have thousands of pages of internal documents that no one looks at. So that did occupy a few HR folks, more junior folks that are helping on a kind of like helpline type thing. But that's, it's not like a whole group of people or anything. So that's probably what I see firsthand.
Okay, thanks. And James, any other groups outside of yours?
I see every team, like design, for example, is using the new tools that are coming out. Product managers are starting to prototype and use Windsurf as well and be able to come up with like a high fidelity thing. I would say the most important thing though is to go look at what your customers are doing with AI and how does that change what you're doing. And I'll give you some examples as I get into it. We have, we're doing back office basically systems, but we aspire to help people run their company. More and more like field service workers are out there, and by that could be, you call a plumber to your house. They're coming in with ChatGPT, they're consulting it on the job. They're taking photos with their meta lenses, recording what they're fixing. And we really need to take that into account for the products that we're developing, right? We're not just using AI to build the same old thing, but the whole world is adopting AI. So like how do we actually open up our platform so our customers can generate their own code within our system? Those are the kinds of things we're trying to think about, right? They don't want to just be confined to an app. They're just as scrappy and productive as you are in your engineering shop. And as I mentioned, the bar for innovation, the fact that I'm coding again, right? The bar for customers who maybe aren't very technical to actually start coding things is low, and they're doing it. So I think that's something to think about as well. Not only how do your employees do it, but really where's the customer going?
Thanks so much. I love hearing all this. I'm supposed to be a moderator, but I'm like mentally taking huge notes. Okay, now I love watching podcasts. Elsewhere, there's a thing called a Diary of a CEO, and the moderator always asks this. I'll start with you, Marco. What is one question I should have asked that I didn't ask that you would like to answer? Like, what didn't I think of? This question. It gives you guys time to think.
Well, thank you, Ken. Well, look, I think that one question that could have asked is, with everything that we know, everything that we've seen, everything that we're implementing, what areas of opportunities do we see in this new agentic world? And I think that the answer to that is a lot. There is still an incredible amount of tooling that's fundamentally lacking in the ecosystem. Tooling for coordinating across agents, for managing context, for making sure that whatever AI does, it is safe, it's compliant. What you're seeing right now is the early stages of technology adoption. Everybody has an opinion, and everybody does it their own way. And there is lots of tooling, and yet all this tooling is not talking to each other, right? So it's a little bit siloed. The AI tooling is, for the most part, siloed. Although we want to live in a world where AI has access to everything and knows everything, the tooling itself is siloed. It is what it is. And so there is a large opportunity to establish new standards, new protocols for this tooling to be able to interact with each other, new ways for the agents to communicate with each other without having to reinvent the wheel all the time. I mean, we are also seeing specs that are emerging, like MCP, changing every 6 months. So they're changing quite fast and quite rapidly. So I think that there is a massive opportunity in developing this new AI world, not just as a user of AI, but also as the architect of AI, and how AI, it is going to fundamentally transform the organization across all functions, and what type of tooling do we need to enable that vision. So lots of opportunity, I think, which makes the whole space quite exciting.
Okay, thank you, Marco. And I picked Marco specifically. He's always quick on his feet. We've gone out, and it's like it just always amazes me how agile he is. But Kevin, so thank you, Kevin. You had a little bit more. What's the question I should have asked you that I should?
Well, I had a slight advantage here because Ken and I emailed about this, and the question I thought you were going to ask me, which I thought about, was in 2 years, will your company's biggest competitive moat be its data or its code? And I went back and forth, and I explained some of my thinking. I'm curious what others think. But I think for me, and I have a background as a developer and development manager, and so for me it's fairly easy to look at someone's app or service and think, okay, I can build that. Like, I can imagine the code and the tools that you used in order to create that. And so that says to me, well, code is not a very big moat. Now the flip side is, if I think, what data am I going to have that's going to be useful? But most of the time, the data, a lot of the time, at least in the experience of the companies I've been in, the data that I have that's useful often comes from the software that I built. So I don't get my data until I've done the coding. So the code then acts as a bit of a moat. And then there's all of the experience and the questions that I ask that produces the data that then creates a moat. And then I thought, well, okay, now if I've got my data, what am I going to do with my data? And then that's where I think some of the things we've been talking about today, and I think there's a lot of intelligence and code that comes in with what am I going to do with my data. And so I went, you see my journey of thinking through this, I went all over the place. I don't know, is kind of where I arrived. I'm sure it will vary a bit by enterprise. Some are going to be much more data oriented and have a lot there, and they'll have sources. I'm thinking from my software experience, but there's obviously tons of companies that would have relatively little software, but enormous amounts of valuable data, depending upon what they did. So it'll vary a bit, but yeah, even from my own experience in kind of a tech world, don't know.
That's right. It's not like all knowable right now, and we're finding out together. So thanks, Kevin, and thanks for asking the question I should have asked.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, James, you've had the most time to.
So this is where Ken is very kind, but I know he knows I'm the slowest on my feet. So he was very familiar. What I would say is, what opportunities or approach might I recommend to startup companies that are trying to penetrate larger companies in the enterprise? And I thought of the question, and while I'm sitting here thinking of it, I actually think it's a great opportunity for you to come in with AI products or solutions, but also know-how, and actually roll up your sleeves more than ever. I think the best way would be to co-develop whatever it is with the customers and be building your product in real time with your customers. I've lived through so many of these technology waves. This is the biggest wave I've seen the fastest. And we'll go through the hype cycle, but it's real. And what you're going to find is more and more companies. There's like a political coolness thing. Like they need to be doing something with AI. And so if they're contracting with somebody, they even will like not go to a traditional vendor who maybe would do a better job just to be able to say, I'm going. We're doing this AI. And like the example I have a friend who owns a audio studio. And all the big names are only going to the AI shops just so they can say they're doing AI studio audio, even though it sucks compared to what they can do. But use that to your advantage. Like make sure that you have the skills and the know-how, and your product is AI, and help leverage this wave, like ride the wave, and co-develop more than you might have. Don't go try to get a fully finished product and bring it to your customers. So I think that's an opportunity to learn, and there's probably more openness to that than there have been in other eras, just because everyone is trying to pivot their organizations so quickly.
Okay, thank you, James. So I have now one last question, but it requires only a short answer. Prediction. When will artificial general intelligence happen? Meaning AI is as smart as human beings across all. Prediction, and we'll check on this. James?
I just watched 2001: Space Odyssey over the weekend, where Hal becomes what's sentient or whatever and evil. I think that it'll get to the point where we can't differentiate in probably like 10 years. But I'm a believer in that there's some kind of spirit in life that we don't quite understand enough to be able to replicate. There's something deeper and metaphysical that we just don't know. And true intelligence is probably quite a ways off. But I think we just won't be able to tell the difference.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, Kevin, your prediction.
Yeah, okay. In terms of can't tell the difference, I'll go 2037. Mainly because I like the number 37, and it's sufficiently far enough off, I think, yeah, it's possible.
Okay, so 10 plus years.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Marco?
Probably a decade. That's that's the safe answer. But look, I think that we're going to be seeing AI taking care of most things that today we use intelligence, like human intelligence for. And to their point, we're probably not going to be able to tell the difference in much shorter time frame. Maybe in like 5 years, 4 years even, with the rapid pace of innovation. I think we're entering also very philosophical questions. What is age AI anyways? Who are we as humans? To your point, are we just intelligence? Is it more than that? I'm not gonna go there because I don't know the answer. But for all intents and purposes, our life will be fundamentally disrupted within 5 to 10 years.
Okay, definitely in our lifetime. So we'll be back in a year and see what kind of answers we provide. It'll be very interesting when that time does happen, because it is in our lifetime. So with that, I love those kind of questions, but even better, the responses and the thoughtful answers, and just they put some effort into this, but also sharing these knowledge and wisdom is amazing. So please a round of applause for my friends. I think that's it. Do we have more drinks and food?
Yeah, there are more drinks and
Perfect. Okay, so we'll mosey over, but we can stay here.